Hi there, everyone. Welcome back. We continue with Parshat Vayeshev this week, and I want to jump right to the second verse of the Parsha. There we are told that Yosef is 17 years old, and he was someone who was a shepherd along with his brothers, taking care of the flock. And he's also described, V'hunar b'nei Vilha ve'et b'nei Zilpa neshei aviv. He's also a youngster, a young lad, along with the children of Bilhah and Zilpah. And he gets along with them, who are the other two wives. There's Rachel and Leah, and there's Bilhah and Zilpah, who were maidservants to Rachel and Leah, and now they were wives. And he had some sort of Na'ar type relationship, this youthful relationship with the children of Bilhah and Zilpah. And the last thing we're told in this verse is Vayavei Yosef et dibatam ra'a el avihem. He would bring evil, bad reports about presumably the brothers here, to their father. So the Midrash here, let's read it, and then we're going to connect it. The Midrash is going to have two distinct parts, you'll see. And the question is, what does part one have to do with part two? I'm not going to do much analyzing until after we read it through, okay? So the Midrash says the following. Yosef ben Shvas Reishah. Yosef is described as 17 years old. Ve'atamar v'hunar. But wait a minute, then the Pasuk then said that he's a nar. He's a youth. But I know he's young. He was just described as 17. Why repeat the word na'ar? Ella, the reason the word is na'ar, youth, is there, sheya'ose ma'ase narut. Yosef is described as a na'ar because he would be doing youthful things. Things that reflect common behavior maybe for a teenager, a child. What we will call this childish behavior. What was he doing? He touched up his eyes. I guess he wanted to make his eyes look a certain way, look good, wants to be liked, thinks he's great. So I'm great, I gotta look great, I gotta be amazing. He picked up his heels. I don't know if this is him trying to just be simply taller, or represented the kind of step, this is the way he was walking. With a certain confidence about himself. And lastly, mitakein bisaro, he would fix his hair. Again, wanted to make sure he looked his best, but seemed to be concerned with that. The Midrash paints him as being very concerned with that. Okay, we'll come back to this part of the Midrash. The Midrash kind of shifts and now says, he was a shepherd. And Vayavei Yosef et dibatam ra'a, and as a shepherd, he obviously was spending time with his brothers, and he would bring bad reports about his brothers to his father. Now the question is, the Torah doesn't tell us what he said. So the Midrash says, Ma'amar, what did he say to his father? What kinds of things did he say to his father? And here we have a three-way argument. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Meir, Omer, Chashudun hei banecha al eiver min hachai. Yosef was accusing his brothers of eating eiver min hachai, eating a limb off of removing a limb from a live animal. And obviously there's a prohibition to eat that meat as well. But you're talking about here causing great suffering to an animal. While it's still alive, you're basically torturing it. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Tolan Einehen Bivnon Haaretz. He says, no. What he told his father was that his brothers had their eye on certain young women, and they were not, their intentions were not good, to say the least. And this was not anybody that they should be seeking out in marriage, and they're talking about these young women maybe in ways that are not appropriate. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, no, here's what Yosef told his father. No, there was teasing and insults being thrown at the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, who were these are the children of the maidservants, who ultimately are wives, though, to Yaakov. And the other brothers were making fun of them and saying, you guys are slaves, because their mom was a maidservant, and they were calling them slaves, avadim. So we have three different opinions here, but ultimately, Rabbi Yehuda bar Simon thinks that they're all correct. And that's not a crazy shot that there were multiple accusations made by Yosef to his father. The Pasuk is not talking about a one-time incident here. It seems that this is what he would do as a co-shepherd of the flock, he would sometimes come back and tell his father the things that he was seeing and hearing. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Simon Amar, he said, Al tlatehon laka. Because of these three accusations, actually, Yaakov was punished in kind. Measure for measure, midah keneged midah. How so? So first of all, how do we know that this is, what principle guides this? So in Mishlei it says, Peles u'moznei mishpat laHashem, that honest scales and balances are what God is all about. And here there seems to have been an injustice. Yosef seems to have made accusations that are not accurate. The Siftei Chachamim says that it wasn't that Yosef accused them falsely outright, with full intention that it was not true, but he made assumptions based on things that he saw or heard and assumed the worst about the other people, about his brothers. And this is where he got information wrong based on assumptions that he was making. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ata amarta chashudim banecha lever min achai. You suspected your brothers of taking the limb of a live animal and taking it off, and they were eating it, whatever. So fine. Chayecha afilu b'shat hakalkala edem ela shochtim va'ochlim. Even when they threw you in the pit and they were doing other terrible things, when it came to slaughtering an animal or ripping it apart, they did it the right way. The pasuk there in that story says, "Vayishchatu se'irizim." They slaughtered properly the goat, which they would then dip Joseph's coat in. But they did that properly. They did not rip the limbs off the animal. They properly slaughtered it. So he was punished with this whole incident of what happened with his coat and the being thrown in the pit. That comes about because of his false accusation with Eiver min Achai, with the limb of the live animals. Second, you accuse them of some of them were calling some of the brothers slaves. So for making that false accusation, you didn't understand the context, maybe you misheard. Le'eved nimkar Yosef. The pasuk in Tehillim says Yosef was sold as a servant himself, as a slave himself. And he does. He ends up in Egypt as a servant. You accuse them of having their eyes on certain daughters of the land. I swear that I'm going to poke the bear, as it were. Literally, migareh b'cha et hadov. I don't know if this is the genesis of that phrase, by the way. I'm going to poke the bear. What was the bear that he pokes here? Vatisa eish et adonav. Potiphar's wife has his eyes on Yosef, and that's how he ends up in jail, because of her false accusations. There's also false accusations of him having improperly abducted her in the house of Potiphar. So this is the Midrash. So how do we connect the first part about his na'arut, his youthfulness, to the second part where he seems to have made some accusations that were inaccurate? He didn't see in his brothers the reality of the situation. So what happened here? So on a pshat level, because of his immaturity and his character, certainly at the beginning of his life, is a much more self-centered character. Think about his dreams. Everyone's bowing down to him. He views himself as the center of the universe. Yosef does. And if he's the center of the universe, well, that oftentimes can be associated with behaviors that signify that. You're very much into yourself. He's very much into how he's perceived, that people love him, that he is amazing, that even his hair is a certain way, he's kicking his heels in a certain way, and he makes sure his eyes look at a certain way, because he wants the world to sort of bow down to him. He thinks he's amazing. And oftentimes when people think that they are amazing, they will be susceptible, such people will be susceptible to also seeing falsehoods in other people. They'll easily suspect that they see flaws in other people that are not really there. But it makes them feel better about who they are. Because the world revolves around me, I'm amazing. And if I'm amazing, sometimes I can be thinking that I can make myself feel even more amazing by saying they are not so amazing. And their actions are really quite disturbing or incorrect or whatnot. And so I think that's what's happening here. On a pshat level, the relationship between Yosef and his brothers breaks down because he was acting immature. Maaseh Narut represents who he is at that stage in his life. He obviously grows up, but as a 17-year-old, he didn't have, he used the favoritism of his father and kind of let it get to him and define how he was going to view his brothers also. And he saw the flaws in them that weren't actually there. And for this, their relationship breaks down. By the way, the verses that follow, just on the pshat level in the text, he gets that coat, and then the brothers, they can't stand him anymore. They can't even say nice things to him because he can't see anything good in them. And he's accusing them of these things constantly left and right that are not true. On a homiletical level, the message I think that Chazal are trying to teach us here is that when we view the actions of other people, we can sometimes be susceptible to viewing them in the worst light and accusing them in our minds of doing something terrible that they're not actually doing or that they're not actually intending, because maybe it makes us somewhere feel good about ourselves. Yankel over there, he's got this problem and that problem, and that's not me. I'm great. I'm great by association of putting them down. And that's not a way to find greatness within ourselves, to look at other people and see what's not really there and kind of make up the story based on some, evidence that doesn't really add up. And it's important for us to remember that if we want to see the greatness in ourselves, we don't need to see what's not great about other people. Just see what's great about ourselves. Work on ourselves. We want to improve? Don't put others down. Put ourselves up. Work on ourselves to get to a better level, to work on whatever flaws we all may possess. I think that's the lesson of this midrash, because it helps relationships. It helps communities grow when we all see what's good about each other, and we don't look at, you're not so good at this, and that makes me feel better about myself. See what's good in ourselves, see the reality of the world, and hopefully through that, we'll create brotherhood between the 12 tribes, and not the hatred that existed between Yosef and his brothers. Have a great week.